Now, in the previous lecture, you understand how to work with operator module in Python. In this lecture, we're going to learn list comprehension. Yes, you heard it right. We already learned this topic in the previous lectures. But in this lecture, we're going to take a closer look how this works, and we will look at some example of it. Using list comprehension, you can save multiple lines of code into one line. We will take a look at that in this lecture. So let's take a look at a very simple example to understand how comprehension works. For example, let's say I want to multiply the list value by itself. For example, let's say if I have a list, and in this list I have values 1, 2, 3 and 4. And I want to multiply the value itself. I want to multiply 1 by 1, 2 by 2, 3 by 3 and 4 by 4. So how do I do that? I want to multiply these numbers by itself. Let me show you how you can create this program using standard Python. And then I will show you how we can do the same thing with list comprehension. So here I'm going to first create a variable, sq means square, and then I'm going to specify list to it. So I'm going to create empty list, and then I'm going to create here for loop for x in, and in the tuple I'm going to pass values 1, 2, 3 and 4. You already know how for loop work in Python. In the block of this for loop, I'm going to say sq dot append, and I'm going to append some values inside it. So I'm going to say here x. Now just out of this for loop, I'm going to say here print, and I'm going to just print this sq. When I execute this file, I'm going to have a 1, 2, 3, 4 value as a result. So in this sq, I have these values. Now what I want to multiply this value by itself. To do that, I'm going to simply say here multiply x, just like this. When I execute this file, I'm going to have the multiplication of these values. So I'm going to have the numbers multiply by itself. Now I can do the same thing with list comprehension very easily. Let me show you how we can do the same thing with list comprehension. So what I'm going to do is, instead of creating this for loop like this, I'm going to just create a for loop inside this empty list. So here I'm going to say for x in, and here I'm going to pass tuple and specify values 1, 2, 3 and 4. And now just for that, what you need to do is, this for loop is going to return the result. So I'm going to store it in the variable. So here I'm going to say x and then specify space, just like this. So once I have this result in this x variable, this for loop is going to create a list and store it in this sq variable. When I execute this file, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 as a result. And now I want to multiply this value by itself. So I'm going to simply say here multiply x, just like this. When I execute this file, I'm going to have the result what I want. So you can notice, using list comprehension, we can save tons of lines of code. Now just for that, what if you want to iterate over string? So for example, let's say I want to iterate over string, and I want to just convert all the characters of the string in uppercase. So how do I do that? Let me show you. If I just say here str is equal to, and here in the list, I'm going to just simply say s dot upper. I'm going to call a method upper, and then here I'm going to say for s in, and then I'm going to pass here value. So for example, here I'm going to say daily tuition. You can pass any string here, that doesn't matter. Now this for loop is going to iterate over this string, and I'm going to convert all these string characters into uppercase, and I'm going to store this list in this str variable. So if I just say here print str, then I'm going to have the result what I want. You can notice here all my characters is now in uppercase. Let's create a simple example to find out vowels in string. So for example, let's say if I have here a variable apple, and now I want to just find the vowels from this apple word. Using the list comprehension, you can easily do that. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to just simply create here a is equal to and specify list here. And then I'm going to say here x if x in, and then I'm going to pass values here a, e, I, o, u. These are the vowels. And then I'm going to pass here else, specify asterisk in the else statement. Then I'm going to say for x in apple. Now let me explain this code first. So this list is going to first execute this for loop, get this character one by one inside this x variable. Then it's going to check if x have this value, just display that value, otherwise display asterisk. So if we have a inside this apple, I want to store a inside this x. if I just say here print A, then you can notice here I have asterisk, asterisk, and then I have E here. Let me just specify here smaller a. When I execute this file, you can notice we have A, asterisk, and E. So in this Apple word, I have two vowels, A and E. So this is how you can use if and else inside the for loop. Just for that, let's take a look at how double iteration work. So what I'm going to do is, here I'm going to just create a simple A variable with a list. But I'm going to put list inside another list. So here I have the nested list. So I have the outer list and inside it I have another list. Now what I want to iterate over this list. So let me first show you the standard way to iterate this list. So for example, if you want to iterate over this A list, you can simply say here define number. Then in this function you would say for B in A. Then you would say for X in B. You need to create two for loop for that to iterate over this list. So in this for loop, I'm going to say yield X. We already know that how to work with yield statement. Just for that, I'm going to say here gen is equal to number. And in the print statement, you can print all these numbers one by one using next. So you need to pass here object gen, just like this. When I execute this file, I'm going to have these numbers using this next function. So if I just duplicate this statement, I'm going to have all these values. And you can put these values inside a list very easily. Now let me show you how you can do the same thing with list comprehension. So let me just get rid of all these statements. And now here I'm going to simply create a variable lt is equal to empty list. And in this list, I'm going to say for B in A. So here is the first for loop. And then I'm going to create another for loop just after this A. And here I'm going to say for X in B. So this is my outer for loop and this is my inner for loop. And then I'm going to just say here X for B in A and X in B. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this outer for loop for B in A. I'm going to create a variable B and get this A variable. Inside this A, I have this inner list. I'm going to iterate it using this for loop. So I'm going to get this B and create a variable X, and I'm going to iterate over this inner list. And I'm going to just store this value in this list using this X variable right here. And I'm going to store this list in this LT variable. So if I just say here print LT, then I'm going to have the result what I want. Now just for that, let me show you a very simple last example. Now what if you want to sort this inner list? So for example, if I have here 4 and here I have 1 and 3, to sort this inner list, I can simply use a sorted function. For example, let me just get rid of this first outer for loop right from here, and instead of this X, I'm going to say here sorted X, just like this. So now this X is going to sort this A variable. So here I'm going to say X in A, just like this. When I execute this file, you can notice I have 2, 4, 1 and 3. So now this is the sorted version of this inner list. So using list comprehension, you can work with the for loop very easily. I hope you understand how to work with list comprehension in Python. Practice with this code to understand how it works in Python. That is all for now. I will see you in the next one.